When you first installed and configured WordPress, you created a user profile for yourself in the form of a username and a password. And that's the user profile you've been using so far in this course. Now it's time to add some more information to that user profile and build it out. Anytime you're logged into a WordPress site, you can see what profile you're currently using by looking in the top right-hand corner of the WordPress toolbar. Here you see it says Howdy Morten, and it's showing this default avatar thing. And this is my user profile. Now it's time to change that profile, and I can do so either by going to the toolbar and selecting Edit My Profile, or by going to the back end of my site, going down to Users, and selecting Your Profile. Both of these will take me to the user profile page, and from here I can change the information about my user profile, as well as some key features of how WordPress appears to me when I'm logged in. At the very top, I get to do something that may seem a little strange to some people. That is, disable the visual editor when writing. So if you remember, anytime you go in and create a new post, I'll open one in a separate tab here, and I type some content, and then I type some more content. Let's see, I'll make this a H2. You can see the visual changes in my content. This is the visual editor. If you check this box here to disable the visual editor when writing for your profile, you will only see the content you're writing in the text editor, so you're only seeing the HTML. The reason why this is an option is that in some cases, you may need to write quite advanced HTML when you create posts, and some people just like to write HTML over looking at things in this WYSIWYG editor. And the reality is, sometimes what you're seeing in the visual editor isn't actually what you see on the front end, so it can be quite distracting. But now you know it's there, and if you prefer to write HTML and you don't want to see the visual editor, you can disable it for yourself by clicking on this button. The next option is purely visual and only impacts you personally. You can change the admin color scheme for the admin panel. So by default, it has this black and blue color scheme, but you can choose the light color scheme or the blue color scheme or the coffee color scheme or ectoplasm or midnight, and anything you want. And you can see the color scheme changes quite dramatically. Now, when this feature was first rolled out, I was like, no one's going to use this. And then I started looking at other people's installations and realized everyone is using this. Almost no one is using the default setting. So I guess this is something people really like. Personally, I kind of like the light one because it's light and really unobtrusive. And I've also used the midnight one a lot, especially when I'm working with sites for other people and I want it to look more professional. But this is a personal option, and this is tied only to your account, so it won't change how anyone else sees your content. Scrolling down, you have the option of enabling keyboard shortcuts for comment moderation. Now, to see how this works, you have to click on the More Information link, which takes you to the codex and gives you a full rundown of all the keyboard options. Now, this is really useful if you have a site with tons of comments and you need to do quick moderation. But for sites that don't have a lot of comments, it might just be a lot of work to learn all these keyboard shortcuts. But if you need it, it's there. Then we have another interesting option. By default, you see the toolbar on the front end of your site. You've seen that throughout the course. Anytime you go to the front end of the site, the toolbar is right there. Here, you have the option of turning the toolbar off on the front page. And you may be wondering, why on earth would you want to do that? Well, it has a simple answer. Sometimes you set up accounts for other people, and it's quite possible you don't want them to see the toolbar. And in that case, you would go in and turn the toolbar off so they can log in, but they won't be distracted by the toolbar when they're logged in. There's also another really rare occurrence, and that is if you are using a theme that has a menu that sticks to the top, the toolbar might interfere with that menu when you are logged in. And in those cases, you might want to turn the toolbar off. But for most cases, you just leave it on. So those were all settings that have to do with how you interact with the application. Next comes the settings that have to do with you personally and your user profile. Here you can enter your name, your last name, and also your nickname if you want to have a nickname, so I'll say Morten. Then, when you've filled these out, you can choose how you want your name to be displayed on the front end of the site. You've noticed that right now, if I go to a post, each of my posts is published by Morten. But if I change this display name publicly as to Morten Rand Hendriksen, and then update the profile, and reload this page, you will see it'll now say Morten Rand Hendriksen. So this allows me to display my name the way I want to. And you'll notice here you have lots of options. You have just your first name, just your last name, just your nickname, just your username, or first name, last name, or last name, first name. So you have all the options you need to make a custom decision. Then you have your email address, and like I said in the very beginning of the course, your account is tied to your email address. So if you change the email address, then you are changing your account as well. And you'll see in the next movie that this email address is also tied to your Gravatar, which is this image that appears when you leave a comment. So it's important that you use the correct email address here. Below that, you can enter a website if you want to. So I'll put in my own website here. And that website will be linked anytime you leave a comment on your site. And you can leave biographical information. Now, depending on the theme you're using, this may or may not work, so we'll test it out. So when I leave biographical information like this and update my profile, and then go to the front end, I might be able to click on my own name on a post and see that biographical information appear. Now you can see here, in the case of 2015, it did not work. But in some themes, you will see the biographical information appear either on the author index or in an author box under individual posts. So maybe if I go to an individual post here, scroll to the bottom, yeah, here you'll see it. Once you add that biographical information, it'll show up in this author box at the bottom of each of the posts you've written. The final option on the profile page is the new password option. And here you'll notice that previously you had to type in your own strong passwords. But today, with the new version of WordPress, you can just click generate and WordPress will generate a horribly complex password for you that you can use. Now, this is becoming more and more common on the web because passwords are becoming a huge security issue. So when you create such a strong password, you should probably also have a password manager to manage your passwords, in which case this will be no problem. If not, you can put in a very simple password if you want to, but WordPress will protest quite loudly and try to make sure you create a strong password by making you confirm that you are using a weak password and so on. So let WordPress generate a really complex password for you, use a password manager, or if you need to create a password that you have to remember, make one that's strong enough that WordPress doesn't balk at your new password. Once you're done changing your settings, click Update Profile, and the new settings automatically kick in, and you'll see them immediately in the WordPress toolbar where you can now see your name, and in other places like where you left a comment. Now you may be wondering why I haven't done anything to the default avatar in the top right-hand corner. Well, we'll address that in the next movie.